Imagine this. Traveller, you are not drawn here by accident. Something in the quiet machinery of the universe placed this moment in your path. An object from deep interstellar night, darker than stone, steadier than chance, has just altered its course by less than 1/10 of a degree. The shift's so precise it's been compared to threading a needle from 2 million kilometres away. What are the odds that such a correction would lead it directly toward Earth's orbital plane? What if that tiny motion wasn't drift, but intention? A silent body gliding past Mars, leaving no tail, no heat, no reason, only a question. Stay with me. Traveller. Tonight, let us begin at a quiet moment in time. A moment so small, so fragile, it could have slipped unnoticed through the cracks of human awareness. But it didn't. Something, call it intuition, coincidence, or the subtle whisper of the cosmos, made one observer pause. And that pause changed everything. It happened on the morning of November 22nd, when most of the world was waking, yawning, stretching into another ordinary day. But in the calm glow of a monitoring terminal deep inside Europe's object tracking network, the universe nudged its first domino. A single line of telemetry shifted by less than 1/10 of a degree. To almost everyone it looked meaningless. A rounding error, a trembling pixel, a brief sigh of the sensor. But not to one analyst. Felix Morvin, working remotely in the stillness of Darmstadt, saw something else. Something intentional. In that tiny angle, so small it could have been ignored, he felt a pattern. A deviation that behaved not like drift, but like choice. And on the screens before him, the interstellar object known as 3I Atlas adjusted its inbound trajectory not wildly, not chaotically, but precisely, as if the movement had been rehearsed long before human eyes arrived to witness it. What does precision mean in the language of the cosmos? To scientists, it means guidance. To philosophers, it means intention. To the quiet, listening heart, it means mystery. And tonight, listener, we step into that mystery together. For as 3I Atlas tilted toward the plane of Earth's orbit, the first truth became clear: natural comets don't behave this way. They tumble, they flare, they shed material into space like drifting petals. Their trajectories are messy, their paths softened by heat and wind and time. But this one did something different, something deliberate. There was no outgassing though it neared the sun, no heat signature though its surface should have boiled, no plume though the solar wind pressed upon it, no visible force at all, and yet it moved. Imagine traveller watching a leaf drift across a still pond only to see it suddenly glide upstream against the current without wind or touch. That was the feeling scientists faced that morning, a quiet, impossible motion. The James Webb Space Telescope, with its vast, unblinking gaze, confirmed what shouldn't be possible. The sunlit side of the object remained cool, colder than any volatile material should be at that distance. There was no sign of sublimation, no whisper of vapour. In physics, no heat means no venting, and no venting means no thrust. And yet, the object changed course. This is where the story becomes harder to hold comfortably, because when an object breaks the laws of motion, the universe usually leaves fingerprints, energy trails, dust signatures, asymmetric wakes. But 3I Atlas left none. It moved like a craft performing a maneuver, but without the light, heat or exhaust of any propulsion mankind has ever known. Even stranger, this was not the first oddity. Back in October, months before the trajectory shift, a solar telescope in Chile captured a fleeting image, a sharp cone-shaped puff extending toward the sun, not away from it. A forward-facing plume that violated every rule of cometary physics. It appeared once, and never again. One moment of defiance, then silence. A single breath from the void. Some said it was an illusion, others said it was noise. But data does not flicker without cause, and the universe does not repeat errors with such precision. And the absence of explanation became its own kind of presence. And so researchers proposed theories: dense material, magnetic acceleration, exotic chemistry, but each hypothesis dissolved under scrutiny. Nothing accounted for the pattern. Nothing satisfied the conditions. Nothing explained how an object could reorient itself cleanly, quietly, without shedding a single grain of dust. In astrophysics, when an object behaves in ways that defy nature, two possibilities remain: either it is made of something we've never encountered, or something inside it is making decisions. A few analysts began to whisper the word no one wanted to say aloud: system. Not rock, not rubble, not debris, but a shell, a platform, a vessel designed for motion without signature. The absence of outgassing, they argued, was not an accident. It was a feature. And this traveller is where the human world shifted from curiosity into quiet concern. As the deviation held steady through the early morning hours, as models recalculated and solved themselves into the same unsettling answers, the internal systems at the European Space Agency began to react not loudly but carefully. Access to telemetry narrowed. Routine data folders vanished behind encryption. Small, precise decisions moved through the organisation like shadows. By 6:12 UTC, the object had been reclassified, not publicly, not loudly, but officially in the language of orbital mechanics. It was no longer listed as an interstellar transient, a visitor passing harmlessly through. Now it carried a different tag, one scientists almost never use lightly. The implication was simple and unnerving. For a hyperbolic object to become a capture candidate, it must shed velocity. But 3 Atlas had no mechanism to shed velocity. And yet, it had slowed. Tonight, travellers sit with that thought gently, not with fear, but with wonder. Somewhere above the sunlit side of our small world, an object from beyond our system changed speed, changed direction, and turned toward the place Earth will be, not where Earth is now, but where it will be in 38 days, a precise line drawn across the void. A quiet correction threaded like a needle through cosmic distance, and in that calm, deliberate motion, the universe whispered again, "Sleep, traveller. We will follow this path together, step by step, breath by breath, under the patient watch of the stars. Traveller, return with me to that quiet morning when the universe seemed to hesitate, when an interstellar visitor shifted its path, yet left no trace of the forces that should have moved it. In the language of astronomy, every motion has a cause. Every acceleration requires a push. Every alteration in trajectory must be born from heat pressure or gravitational pull. But as November the 22nd unfolded, the familiar rules of cosmic behaviour fell away one by one like dust slipping through an open palm. 3I Atlas had changed course. That part was undeniable. Across ground-based telescopes and orbiting observatories, the object's new vector appeared consistent, confirmed, repeated. It was as if multiple instruments scattered across continents and altitudes all whispered the same message the object had turned. Yet none of them could explain why. There was no plume of gas trailing behind it. No spray of dust, no faint thermal bloom, no surface heating that could drive sublimation. Comets are driven by sunlight, warmed until their ices erupt into vapour. But this object remained cool, quiet, almost restful, even as it neared the sun's domain. Scientists expected the coma, the glowing envelope of gas and dust around a cometary nucleus, to inflate. Instead, the space around 3I Atlas stayed stark and empty. Spectrometers searching for the usual signatures, water vapour, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, found nothing. The James Webb Space Telescope measured the temperature of its sun-facing surface and discovered an eerie stillness. It was not warm enough to sublimate anything. Without heat, there could be no outgassing. Without outgassing, there could be no thrust. And without thrust, the shift should have been impossible. Imagine a listener standing beside a vast lake at dawn. The water is still untouched by wind. Then, without ripple or disturbance, a distant boat glides 3 meters sideways, silent and perfect. Your mind knows what should be required to make that motion happen, yet your senses tell you nothing caused it. That was the sensation echoing through the scientific community, an impossible slide through the void. For days, the absence of a plume haunted the data. It was not simply that the object lacked a dust tail, it lacked disturbance of any kind. Natural bodies, even the most inert, leave faint fingerprints in the environment. They scatter light unevenly, they shed microparticles, they wobble in rotation. Yet 3 Atlas maintained an unnerving level of symmetry. The shift was so clean, so linear, it resembled not a comet's chaotic push, but a manoeuvre, a word no one wanted to use aloud. Researchers proposed possibilities stretching the boundaries of known physics. Maybe the object was extraordinarily dense, resisting thermal excitation. Maybe it possessed magnetic properties that interacted with solar particles in unknown ways. Maybe its surface composition absorbed heat differently. But these were theories built not on evidence but on absence. No instrument detected magnetic flux. No telescope saw thermal asymmetry. No rotational instability appeared in the models. Nature usually expresses her defiance loudly, through storms, heat light, or shattering events. This was different. This was silence. And silence in the universe is never empty. It is a sign, a space where meaning gathers. As the anomaly deepened, agencies began to treat the object less like a drifting visitor, and more like something under control. Access to its telemetry tightened. Observatories received unusual instructions. Internal modelling files moved behind restricted permissions. Scientists accustomed to transparent collaboration were suddenly rerouted, denied access mid-analysis. A few questioned the changes publicly, but their messages disappeared just as quietly as the files had. Inside these secure halls, the language around the object evolved. It was still called a comet, but the tone shifted. Analysts spoke of it as though it possessed structure, something hollow, stabilized from within, capable of altering motion without shedding force into the vacuum. It was not a conclusion, only a possibility. But possibilities have gravity, and this one began to pull minds toward an uncomfortable horizon. Then came the reclassification. At 6:12 UTC, in the still hours of morning across Europe, the object's status changed. In the internal tracking system where every celestial body is labelled for predictability, 3 Atlas was quietly reassigned as a capture candidate. This term, used sparingly and only with precision, meant that the object was behaving as though it might become bound to the Sun, or to a planet rather than escaping the solar system entirely. A hyperbolic traveller had somehow shed velocity, and without natural forces to explain that, Los analysts were left staring into a new possibility. To capture something traveller is to draw it into orbit, to hold it, to keep it near. For 3D Atlas to be a capture candidate, it had to lose energy. But the universe showed no mechanism for that loss. And so the question lingered, did the object slow down on its own? Across models at ESA and JPL, something else emerged. Not only had 3i Atlas adjusted direction, it adjusted toward a very specific region of space, a region Earth would occupy in 38 days. The models did not predict collision. They predicted convergence, a shared corridor, a place where the two paths would overlap in time. Planets are not stationary targets. They move constantly, endlessly. To aim for where Earth will be weeks ahead requires foresight, a concept deeply unsettling in scientific discourse. Yet there it was, a path that narrowed with each new update, as if the object were refining its motion, decreasing error, locking in on an invisible thread. This was not a tumble through chaos. This was a glide into alignment. Natural bodies wander, they drift, they react. But this object corrected. It refined. It obeyed a logic no one could trace. Tonight, traveller, remember this: you are not lost in space, you are witnessing it. A universe where silence is not emptiness but intention waiting to be understood. Rest now. The stars remain awake. Traveller, let us drift deeper into the unfolding quiet of this mystery. For as the first shock waves of the trajectory shift spread through observatories around the world, something else began to surface, something subtler than the motion itself, yet far more revealing. A pattern faint at first, like a heartbeat felt through layers of stone. A pulse. It began with a flicker, barely perceptible. A rhythmic brightening and dimming within the thin haze surrounding 3i Atlas. Most astronomers dismissed it. Data noise, they said. Image drift. Atmospheric interference. The excuses were easy, familiar, comforting. But the flicker returned. And soon, across 3 continents beneath different skies and different instruments, observers began to notice the same thing, light rising and falling, in slow, deliberate cycles. Not chaotic flashes, not random outbursts, but a rhythm. Imagine watching a lantern deep in a dark cavern glowing gently, then ebbing, then glowing again, always in time, always with purpose. That was what the data revealed. A steady pulse repeating every 11.2 hours with a variation of less than 1%. Nature is many things, traveller, but perfect timing is rarely one of them. Rotation patterns drift, sublimation fluctuates, dust clouds shift unpredictably. But this was a metronome. Scientists cautious by training and temperament looked first for familiar patterns. Rotation perhaps, a slow spin of the object exposing more reflective surfaces on each turn. But when the models were tested against the light curve, something didn't match. The glow did not shift laterally as would be expected from a rotating body. It expanded outward radially as though the entire Comet inhaled and exhaled. Expansion, contraction, a breath. There are few moments in scientific work when disbelief arrives not as a spike of fear, but as a slow dawning stillness, a recognition that the universe has presented something that does not fit into any known category. For those studying Threes Atlas, this was one of those moments. Astronomers in New Zealand provided critical confirmation. Their filtered ultraviolet frames reveal the same cycle coma swelling by a few percent then receding. A minuscule change in percentage, yes, but in physical scale it translated to thousands of kilometres of shifting glow. It was as if the object were regulating itself. Theories emerged, carefully worded, hedged in caution, yet undeniably reaching beyond the boundaries of the expected. Internal resonance, some said. Pressure pockets building and releasing beneath the surface. But natural vents erupt violently, unpredictably. They fracture, they burst, they scream their presence across spectrometers. 3i Atlas whispered. Softly, precisely, every time. Another theory proposed magnetic flux breathing a charged body interacting with the solar wind, compressing and relaxing like a pulse of plasma. But the timing did not vary with solar conditions. Even during a flare, the rhythm held perfectly steady. As if external forces had no influence at all. Such consistency, traveller, implies something deeper memory. Not emotional memory, but mathematical memory, an internal clock, a governing cycle. Whether mechanical or biological, no one could say. But the behaviour matched neither rock nor ice nor dust. A few analysts speaking only within private circles began using the phrase breath signature. They did not mean breath in the human sense, but in the sense that something within the object was modulating energy in a patterned way. A fluctuation that felt less like reaction and more like regulation, less like noise and more like expression. Meanwhile, the James Webb Space Telescope added another layer to the mystery. Across the mid-infrared range, the pulse appeared not only in visible brightness but in heat distribution. The temperature rose slightly with each expansion, and cooled gently with each contraction. Not sharp changes, smooth ones like waves in a calm sea. Everything pointed back to the same conclusion. The pulse came from within. Imagine realizing that an object from outside our solar system is not simply drifting or tumbling or eroding, but operating. That it maintains a cycle. That it is at least in some sense alive with process. Tonight, listener, consider what it means to witness such a phenomenon. The universe is old beyond comprehension. Its distances are cruel, its silence is immense. And yet here, for the first time in recorded human history, something passed through the solar wind and revealed a pattern, a rhythm, a sign of interior order, not chaos, not decay, but system. The pulse continued even after the trajectory shift, even after the deceleration, even after the object aligned with Earth's future orbital path, as if everything, the motion, the targeting, the silence, had been timed to that rhythm, and through it all, agencies around the world remained quiet. No announcements, no briefings, no explanations. It was easier to dismiss the flickers than to confront the possibility they suggested. Easier to bury the significance beneath technical language than to admit what the data implied. But the observers, professionals and amateurs alike kept watching. And with every cycle, the pulse deepened the sense that 3 Atlas was not merely arriving, it was preparing. What does preparation look like in the vacuum of space? Not speed, not acceleration, but harmony and alignment between purpose and motion. Tonight, as you breathe gently and let the world soften around you, imagine this somewhere far above an object older than our species continues its silent rhythm. A cycle untouched by sunlight, unbothered by solar wind, unshaken by its own change in course. A cycle it carried across the void between stars. You're not lost in this universe. You're witnessing it unfold. And somewhere beyond the reach of our understanding, something ancient still moves with intention, one pulse at a time. Sleep now, traveller. The cosmos keeps its own rhythm, and tonight it keeps watch over you. Traveller. As the pulse of Three-Eye Atlas spread quietly through the scientific world, another kind of silence began rising to the surface, one not from the object itself, but from us. A human silence. A deliberate one. It began with a press briefing that never happened. On the morning of November 22nd, long before most of the world was awake, NASA and ESA were preparing to share their first synchronized update on the interstellar object's changing trajectory. The announcement had been planned for days. Questions had been gathered, background notes drafted. A moment of clarity seemed close, and then without warning the event vanished. No postponement, no revised schedule, just a blank space where truth should have been. The livestream placeholder read only "This event has been removed by the host." A sentence that felt less like an update and more like a closing door. Inside the quiet corners of scientific networks, confusion spread. For those of us who have dedicated our lives to watching the skies, this kind of erasure carries its own weight, a signal not of malfunction, but of decision. Someone somewhere had chosen silence, and traveller. When the universe shows us something new, and our own institutions go quiet, the silence becomes its own kind of message. As the minutes passed, the cancellation rippled through online rooms where researchers gathered. Social feeds went still. Emails returned with the cold line. We are not authorized to comment on this event. It felt like watching a telescope shutter its lens in the middle of an eclipse. But if the cosmos has taught humanity anything, it is this: when one eye closes, another opens. Within the same day, amateur astronomers around the world, people with weather-worn telescopes in backyards, deserts, mountaintops began sharing their raw footage. Frames stacked in the quiet hours before dawn, blurry sequences sharpened by persistence and passion. And in these unofficial glimpses, something became unmistakable. The object had continued its precise, deliberate descent toward Earth's orbital corridor. Its path was not drifting, it was converging. Months earlier, 3 Atlas had been just another interstellar traveller passing through, bound for the outer dark. But now it was something else entirely. Something that had turned, slowed, aligned and breathed. A presence moving with a kind of mathematical intention. Tonight, listener, imagine standing in a quiet control room where rows of screens glow with orbital data. The hum of servers fills the air. Charts update in real time like a heartbeat against the dark. And suddenly a pattern emerges, too exact to be chance, too measured to be natural. A line of motion bending into synchronicity with Earth. Even the most skeptical analysts felt their breath catch. Because in orbital mechanics, alignment is not a metaphor. It is a statement, a choice, a door opening. The model showed something unprecedented. Three-Eye Atlas was adjusting itself into a capture window, a region of space where 2 bodies can temporarily share momentum, allowing for orbital interaction or controlled flyby. This is how spacecraft arrive at planets. This is how probes prepare to enter orbit. This is how intelligence announces itself quietly without words. And yet no agency dared to say it aloud. Instead, the world was given silence, as if the truth were too heavy to place on a table. But traveller silence does not erase reality. It only makes the mind listen harder. Throughout that day, observers noticed another unsettling detail. Scientists who were scheduled to present at conferences, bright minds who spent their lives explaining the heavens, began withdrawing from their events without explanation. Their voices, usually active and eager to share, fell still, not out of fear, not out of confusion, but out of instruction. The cancellation of the briefing was not an isolated moment, it was a boundary, a line drawn in dim light. A signal that the narrative had shifted from science to strategy, and yet the sky continued its patient unfolding. Through a yard, Atlas continued breathing. Earth continued rotating into its path. What happens when an ancient visitor crosses into the territory of human uncertainty? When a celestial object refuses to behave the way we expect, refuses to dim, to drift, to leave, humanity turns inward, agencies retreat behind caution, and the heavens wait in silence. Tonight, listener, imagine the object drifting beyond the orbit of Mars, gliding through cold space with a calmness that seems almost deliberate. No tail, no plume, no shedding ice, no chaos. Just a steady, unbroken shape sliding through the dark. Imagine the way its surface holds the cold, refusing to warm under the sun. How its brightening pulses travel through its thin halo like thought moving through mist. How even now its trajectory lines up with a point in space where Earth will be not today, not tomorrow, but in 38 days. What are the odds? What cosmic wind pushes such precision? What mind or mechanism or memory guides something across the void of interstellar space? Some of us believe this is a probe, some believe it is a message, some believe it is a test, and some believe it is something older than our imagination allows. But whatever it is, traveller, the important truth is this: it is not random. It is not wandering. It is not lost. It is following a pattern, a purpose, a quiet line drawn through space with the steady patience of something that has travelled far longer than humanity has existed. Scientists proposed 3 private theories, none spoken publicly. The first theory whispered that 3-Eye Atlas was an ancient surveyor programmed to observe worlds like ours, worlds that glow into radio frequencies, worlds that announce their presence with technology. Perhaps it has passed countless planets. Perhaps we are simply its next waypoint. The second theory suggested activation, that our signals, the hum of our civilization, awakened a dormant response in this interstellar traveller. That once our electromagnetic voice reached a certain brightness, the object recognised us. A cosmic doorbell answered. The third theory, the one spoken only in the quietest corners, suggested the object was evaluating us, testing the reach of our instruments, the honesty of our institutions, the coherence of our species, watching how we respond when confronted with the unknown. And traveller, if that is true, then our silence speaks louder than our words. Still, the universe does not judge, it only observes. And tonight, beneath its ancient gaze, you and I sit together in the quiet, listening to the unfolding of a story older than our world. Tonight the universe whispers again. You are not lost in this vastness, you are part of it, and some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only witnessed. So rest, listener. Let your breath slow, let your thoughts drift. Whatever approaches moves with purpose but not with haste. Its rhythm is older than fear, older than time. Sleep, traveller. The cosmos will keep watch. By the late evening of November 22nd, a quiet unease drifted across the global astronomical community, the kind that settles not as alarm but as recognition. Something subtle had changed in the models, something precise, convergent, undeniable. For weeks, 3 Atlas had been treated as a distant curiosity, another transient wanderer passing briefly through the sun's domain before slipping back into interstellar dark. Yet the newest datasets arriving from Europe, Asia and North America no longer resembled the broad and forgiving arcs typical of such objects. Instead, their trajectories tightened into a narrow corridor that pointed unmistakably toward Earth's orbital path. It was a convergence too exact to dismiss, too deliberate to align with the randomness expected of a cometary visitor. And as scientists processed the implications in dim rooms filled with monitors and humming servers, one truth emerged with gentle clarity: the object was no longer simply passing through, it was arriving. In orbital mechanics, precision is rarely an accident. Natural bodies drift, scatter, respond to gravitational tides and suffer the chaotic influence of solar radiation. Their paths widen over time rather than narrow. But 3-Eye Atlas displayed the opposite behaviour, its possible futures compressing into a single line, a corridor of movement that suggested intent rather than chance. To meet a moving planet at a specific time requires foresight calculation and an understanding of orbital rhythm. Earth is not a stationary target. It moves swiftly through space its position, shifting thousands of kilometers each hour. Yet the models showed 3i, where t less, adjusting its speed and orientation in a manner that placed it precisely where Earth would be in 38 days. Rocks do not make appointments, guided systems do. As researchers quietly exchanged messages, the phrase targeting Earth began circulating. Not in the dramatic sense of collision or harm, but in the technical, almost clinical language of alignment of one body, adjusting course to intersect the path of another. The distinction mattered. This was not a prediction of catastrophe, it was an observation of intention. The object's deceleration did not match any natural process known to astronomy. Its path curved across gravitational lines rather than falling naturally along them. Even its silence was engineered: no outgassing, no thermal plume, no Doppler signature. In the absence of traditional explanations, theory moved inward toward possibilities that had never before been taken seriously. Some scientists favoured a gentle hypothesis that 3i Atlas might be an ancient surveyor gliding between star systems and performing long-range observations of habitable worlds. Perhaps Earth was simply one stop among countless others in a mission older than humanity's concept of time. This interpretation offered comfort, a framework that allowed the object to remain mysterious without being threatening. But even that idea struggled to explain the sophistication implied by the object's behaviour. Observation does not demand perfect silence. It does not require selective invisibility. And it does not require a trajectory so carefully tuned that it resembles approach choreography. The second hypothesis leaned toward activation. Earth has been broadcasting electromagnetic signals into space for over a century, television, radio, navigation systems, and more. These signals expand outward like a growing sphere now more than 100 light-years across. Some researchers wondered whether 3i Atlas was programmed to awaken when it detected such emissions shifting from passive drift to active course correction. But if it had awakened, then activation led to another question activated for what no clear answer emerged. The third hypothesis lingered like a shadow. According to this view, 3i Atlas was not a probe or a witness, but a test, a calibration object designed to assess the awareness and coordination of a young civilization. It would not need to communicate or land. It would simply watch. It would see who noticed, who reacted, who fell silent. It would note which institutions concealed information and which observers revealed it. And based on the cancellations, data blackouts, and institutional quiet, humanity's reactions were already being measured. Yet even as theories branched in new directions, what mattered most was the movement itself. The more data that flowed in, the more the object's path stabilized. Variance shrank. Prediction maps that previously covered thousands of kilometers began tightening to scales smaller than a planet's radius. This was not the behavior of a tumbling ice fragment. It was the behavior of something carrying memory, something capable of maintaining a heading with subtle precision. For the first time, professionals and amateurs alike sensed that they were watching an approach, not an escape. The emotional response, however, did not align with fear. It aligned with awe. The cosmos is vast beyond imagining, and encounters with its wandering messengers can evoke a humbling peace rather than terror. Humanity, for all its complexity, remains young in the scale of galactic time. The possibility that another traveller or another intelligence could drift near our world invites more reflection than panic. Observers across continents stared into the night sky and felt small in a way that was strangely comforting. In that smallness there was wonder. The greatest mysteries of the universe rarely arrive with noise. Instead, they present themselves in silence, allowing the mind to expand around the unknown. 3 Atlas continued its approach with no hostility, no signal, no dramatic flair, just a calm persistence like a thought moving slowly across the mind of the cosmos. And if its purpose remains concealed, that too is part of the story. The unknown is not our enemy, it is our teacher. Tonight, traveller, let the presence of this interstellar visitor be a reminder of how vast reality truly is. The night sky above you is not empty. It is alive with motion and memory. Earth is not isolated. It is part of a grand, unfolding conversation among stars. And you listening here in the quiet are part of that conversation too. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They are meant to be witnessed with steady breath and an open mind. So rest now. Let uncertainty settle gently around you. Whatever moves in the dark does so with a rhythm older than fear and older than time. Sleep softly, traveller. The cosmos will keep watch. By the time the world turned once more toward morning, the enigma of Three-Eye Atlas had deepened, not through revelation, but through absence. Silence, carefully curated, deliberately shaped, became the new language of the agencies tracking it. As models aligned and predictions stabilized, the one thing that did not appear was explanation. And yet, in this very withholding, something important came into focus. Humanity was no longer charting the behavior of an interstellar object. It was charting its own response to the unknown. The earliest hints of this shift came from the amateur community. While official channels grew restrained, observers across deserts, farmland and mountain ridges continued pointing their telescopes toward the invisible corridor where the object now moved. Their instruments were modest compared to the great observatories, but their persistence was priceless. They captured faint pulses of light, snippets of motion, the quiet breathing of a vessel or comet, or something that defied naming. In these glimpses, the object revealed itself as steady, coherent, and unnervingly unchaotic, so unlike the icy crumbling wanderers our species has known. These faint records became a counter-narrative to institutional quiet, a grassroots archive of cosmic truth. And perhaps that was always going to happen. When the sky changes, people look up. They always have. Long before governments, before agencies, before data pipelines and orbital charts, ordinary eyes track the heavens with nothing more than patience and awe. There is something sacred in that lineage, something the modern world often forgets. Yet this time, the sky was not simply offering beauty, it was offering precision. The object's motion continued aligning with Earth's path, tightening into a thread so narrow it resembled intention. Even those who resisted such language found themselves returning to the same question, spoken softly in private. Why would an object from another star adjust itself with this level of accuracy? What kind of natural phenomenon behaves like a navigator? No one claimed answers, but everyone felt the shift. In quiet rooms, analysts compared the object's behaviour to the mechanics of orbital insertion, the delicate dance used when spacecraft approach a planet and prepare to enter orbit without burning too much fuel. It is a technique of subtlety requiring small, constant adjustments to meet a moving target at the right place and the right time. The resemblance was striking enough that several researchers reportedly removed the word comet from their internal notes, replacing it instead with body or platform, as though the old vocabulary had become too small for what they were seeing. Even stranger was the calmness of the object's approach. There was no visible venting, no energy discharge, no chaotic push from sublimating ice, nothing that explained its manoeuvring. It turned without thrust, slowed without heat, aligned without flare. If it was a natural object, it was the quietest and most disciplined one ever recorded. If it was not natural, then its silence was the surest sign that its design was intentional. The agencies tracking it seemed to recognize this too. The more the objects behaved in ways that challenged established models, the more the institutions withdrew into procedural fog. Not declarations, not warnings, not conclusions, just a slow retreat into phrases like internal review and data under evaluation. The language was soft, but its subtext was unmistakable. Something was happening that could not be easily communicated with familiar scientific certainty, and perhaps that was appropriate. After all, humanity is far more prepared to explain known phenomena than to sit with unprecedented ones. Mystery is uncomfortable, ambiguity is heavy, but sometimes the universe refuses to give clean answers, offering instead a wandering presence that moves with quiet purpose across the dark. It was in this vacuum of certainty that deeper philosophical questions began to surface. What does it mean truly to witness the arrival of something from the interstellar void, a traveller older than our species following a path shaped by forces we cannot yet decipher? Should such an encounter evoke fear or reverence or simply humility? Is the cosmos warning us, testing us, or merely revealing that we are not alone in this vast cooling sea of stars? Such questions did not belong to scientists alone. They belong to everyone. The night sky is the oldest public domain shared communal borderless. Whether seen through a backyard telescope or a billion-dollar observatory, the sky does not change what it shows. It only changes who is willing to speak about it. As 3i Atlas continued its silent alignment, the models grew even tighter. The variance narrowed to a scale so precise that one analyst compared it to threading a needle from 2 million kilometers away with hands carved from ice. The metaphor captured something beyond physics. It captured the poetry of the object's motion, an elegance that seemed almost conscious, as though the object were gliding rather than falling. The emotional landscape shifted with the models. What had first been regarded as a scientific anomaly now began to feel like a cosmic event. Not a threat, not a harbinger, but a visitation, an arrival shaped not by catastrophe but by curiosity. In late-night conversations, some astronomers described the feeling as standing at the threshold of a long-closed door hearing a soft knock from the other side. Not urgent, not violent, just present. And beneath this presence lay a poignant truth: the universe is far older and more intricate than human fear. Its mysteries are vast, not because they hide danger, but because they invite understanding. The cosmos is not against us. It is simply beyond us until moments like this when something crosses the boundary and comes into view. Tonight, traveller, imagine that boundary thinning. Imagine the object moving with quiet composure, breathing its faint pulses into the darkness. Imagine it not as a warning, not as an intruder, but as a reminder that the story of the universe is still unfolding, and humanity is still learning how to read its pages. Some mysteries drift toward us, not to frighten but to awaken. As you rest, let that awareness settle gently into your mind. Let the unknown be spacious, not sharp. Let the presence of 3i Atlas remind you how small and miraculous your place in the cosmos is. You are not lost beneath the stars, you are part of them. So breathe slowly, listener. Allow the universe to hold the questions you cannot answer tonight. The sky is wide, the night is deep, and whatever moves in that dark approaches with patience older than fear. Sleep now, traveller, the cosmos is keeping watch. As the shadow of night swept across half the world, another kind of darkness settled, not the comforting darkness of sleep, but the silence of missing data. At 09:06 UTC on November 22nd, just hours after 3D Atlas altered its course with unnatural precision, the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter went quiet. Not entirely telemetry, continued power levels remained stable. The uplink stayed green, but the science feed, the stream of information that should have captured the object's thermal and ultraviolet profile, simply stopped. No alert from mission control, no technical error logged. Only a sudden surgical silence. To those familiar with the rhythms of space instrumentation, the silence was suspicious in its perfection. Machines fail messily. Data corruption leaves scars. But this interruption was clean, deliberate, timed, almost exactly to the moment. 3i Atlas decelerated and slid into its Earth-aligned arc. When the stream resumed 4 hours later, 2 files were missing, files containing the exact window in which the object had performed its most inexplicable maneuver. The absence was so pointed it felt less like an error and more like an erasure. In internal boards at ESO, whispers began forming. One researcher posted anonymously, "We had the data, it was live," and then it was gone. The message vanished minutes later, but the sentiment lingered. Silence in this context was not inactivity, it was action. Travellers have long learned to read silence. Sailors once listened to the absence of waves. Desert explorers listen to the quiet between winds. Astronomers too know the language of absence. What is missing can matter as deeply as what is seen. And here, as Earth drifted around the sun, the missing frames seemed to speak of caution, or containment, or perhaps something more ancient, a human instinct to delay comprehension until understanding feels safe. But the cosmos does not wait for our comfort. As Europe slept, and the Americas blinked into their morning, the missing data window reverberated across research teams. The idea that an interstellar object had performed a controlled maneuver without leaving any physical signature had already strained rational interpretation. but the idea that the most relevant observations were withheld cleanly deliberately without technical justification pushed the enigma into a new dimension. Scientists do not fear the unknown as a concept. They fear interference with the process of making the unknown legible. What remained visible, however, was the orbital truth. Independent analysts rerun simulations using the last unaltered telemetry fed through the Public Horizon system, and the resulting trajectory confirmed what the missing files hinted. 3i Atlas wasn't drifting, it was descending. Not toward Earth as a collision target, but into Earth's future position, a point in space Earth would occupy in nearly 6 weeks. The alignment was uncanny, the precision unsettling. Even the most skeptical modelers admitted privately this is not random motion. Traveller. Imagine that moment sitting in a small lab lit only by the blue glow of graphs and numbers, watching dots transform into lines, then into curves that align with impossible accuracy. Imagine the breath you hold without noticing the stillness that enters your chest, as something ancient and patient moves with intention through the void. Even scientists who train themselves to meet mystery with rigour felt the weight of something profound, a feeling not of danger but of recognition. Meanwhile, outside official channels, the sky itself continued speaking. Amateur astronomers from Australia to Chile reported faint rhythmic pulses coming from the object's coma, like halo expansions and contractions, so subtle they could only be seen through stacked frames collected over hours. The breathing quality of those pulses repeating with a period of 11.2 hours matched earlier thermal fluctuations detected by James Webb. It was as if the object possessed an internal cycle, steady, calm, purposeful. The universe rarely builds such symmetry by accident. Rumours began circulating within CT circles. Not declarations, nothing dramatic. Just gentle questions. Could the pulse be regulatory? Is it maintaining internal pressure? Could this be a form of thermal memory? The object did not answer, but the rhythm continued slow, unwavering, older than any human system. While these patterns emerged, another silence stood out. NASA and ESA had scheduled a joint briefing for the morning of November 22nd, an event meant to discuss updated orbital insights and spectrometric findings. But the briefing evaporated moments before it began, credentials revoked, pages wiped, the phrase internal scheduling conflict appearing like a placeholder for a truth too heavy to share. Journalists who had been prepared to attend received curt messages, "We cannot comment at this time." The silence felt coordinated, even protective, like shields raised around something fragile. And yet the sky showed no danger. The numbers suggested no impact trajectory. The pulse carried no aggression. The object drifted with the serenity of a monk crossing a desert. It was not the object that stirred unease. It was the implications of intention. If something chooses to move with purpose, do we call it a comet? If something follows a pattern, do we call it a rock? If something approaches our world with precision, do we dismiss it as a coincidence? Humanity, for the first time in generations, faced a visitor that challenged its categories. Not a threat, not a miracle, something in between and beyond. As night deepened and the world spun onward, a quiet acceptance began settling into those who watched most closely. Not acceptance of danger, but of scale. The recognition that the universe is vast enough and old enough to hold forms of motion we have not yet learned to name. That intention may take shapes we do not immediately understand. That silence can mean many things, not all of them ominous. And traveller, in that recognition, something softened. Fear gave way to awe. Awe gave way to humility. And humility opened the door to a deeper truth. Sometimes the universe reveals itself not through answers, but through the questions it refuses to hide. Tonight, as you let your breath slow and the room around you grow still, imagine 3i Atlas drifting through cold space, steady, quiet, unthreatening, held by physics we do not yet comprehend. Imagine its faint pulse beating like a distant metronome in the dark, keeping time for a story far older than our species. Imagine that for once humanity's role is not to explain but simply to witness. The cosmos is not asking us to understand, it is asking us to listen. Rest now, traveller, sleep without fear. The night is wide and whatever approaches moves with patience, not haste. The universe will keep watch while you dream. As dawn crept quietly across the continents, the global scientific community found itself confronting a new and deeper layer of the three-eye Atlas mystery, one not born from images or telemetry, but from contradictions. What the object was doing did not match what the universe typically allows, and nowhere was that contradiction clearer than in the readings from its spectral emissions. In the early hours of November the 21st, long before the trajectory shift stunned analysts, ExoMars had performed what should have been a simple calibration sweep. Its spectrometer, aimed casually across the region where Thrurai Atlas had last been tracked, picked up a narrow spike at exactly 9 microns. At first, it seemed like noise, cosmic rays, solar scatter sensor interference. Such anomalies appear often in raw feeds, but when the full data set was processed the next day, that same spike appeared again. Not weaker, not distorted, identical. A clean, sharp emission line, the kind that nature does not usually repeat with such precision. What it revealed was even stranger. The gas responsible for the spike was pure nickel vapor. Not nickel mixed with iron, not part of a mineral breakdown, just nickel unbound, floating freely, its signature narrow and symmetrical like the whisper of a refined metal meeting ultraviolet light. To the untrained eye, this might seem insignificant. Nickel exists throughout the cosmos. It forms in supernova hides in the cores of asteroids, binds with iron in the hearts of planets. But that binding is the rule. The absence of iron is the anomaly. You don't find nickel alone in nature unless something has stripped the iron away. Or unless the material was purified, processed, engineered. One astrophysicist put it bluntly in a private message later leaked: iron should appear before nickel. If iron isn't there, someone removed it. And with that quiet statement, the conversation changed. For weeks, the object had defied the expectations of cometary physics. No sublimation, no jets, no coma, no tail, no thermal bloom. Now it was breaking the rules of chemistry too. And yet the temperature readings showed none of the heat that would have been required to strip or refine metals naturally. Nickel vapor should come from intense energy, violent interaction, or industrial processing. But 3i Atlas revealed no accompanying thermal spike. The metal was there, but the cause was invisible. It was as if the object carried memory of heat, without heat of process, without trace. This absence of visible mechanism made the nickel signature feel almost like a fingerprint, left deliberately faint, as though the object permitted one detail to escape but withheld the rest. The more scientists looked, the less they could claim certainty. The data did not mislead. It merely refused to explain. Across observatories, researchers whispered new terms: refined material, industrial origin, insulation residue alloy shedding. Words that made little sense in a natural context but fit uncomfortably well within engineered systems. A comparison circulated quietly in 2018 when a defunct satellite fragment burned through Earth's atmosphere. Its infrared signature displayed a nearly identical nickel-only spike. A match that was not exact but suggestive enough to unsettle enough to provoke. But 3i Atlas was not burning, it was not melting, it was not shedding insulation. It was drifting in cold space without temperature rise, carrying a signature that should not exist. And all the while, the object remained silent, pulsing, aligning itself with Earth's future position. Traveller imagined sitting with these pieces not as science fiction, not as fear, but as quiet facts laid before you like stones arranged in a circle. Each one alone is intriguing. Together they form a pattern, a story. Not yet clear, not yet whole, but unmistakably intentional in the way it refuses to collapse into randomness. The absence of iron, the presence of pure nickel, the lack of heat, the rhythmic breathing in infrared, the perfect alignment with Earth's orbit. If the universe was offering a puzzle, it was doing so with patience. And perhaps that is why the professionals grew quieter. Not because they hid fear, but because they sensed the need for reflection. Humanity does not encounter interstellar artifacts often, if indeed this was one. And when confronted with something that may be older than our civilizations, something that might have travelled for millennia with purpose, the instinct to speak becomes less important than the instinct to listen. In the amateur community, however, the story continued to unfold freely. One observer in New Zealand noted a subtle shift in coma density, exactly synchronised with the object's rhythmic pulse. Another in Argentina detected faint fluctuations in ultraviolet scattering. A third in Australia, whose footage had already captured the now famous silhouette, noticed brief dimming episodes that seemed too regular to be random. They had neither the restrictions nor the hesitation of institutions. They had only the sky their instruments and the willingness to look. It is often said that nature hides her mysteries in chaos, but 3 Atlas was hiding its mystery in order, in symmetry, in precision. And if intelligence leaves a signature, that signature often looks like intention wrapped in silence. As the days passed, a quiet realization began to take shape. Perhaps the object was not merely passing through our system. Perhaps it was showing us something about itself, about the universe, about our place within it. Not through messages or signals or dramatic displays, but through the poetry of its behavior. A vessel that breathes without heat, a body that moves without force, a presence that aligns its path with our world through a logic we have not yet learned to understand. Tonight, traveller, rest with this thought. The universe does not reveal everything all at once. It reveals enough to draw us closer enough, to invite humility enough to remind us that intelligence, whether biological, mechanical, or something beyond our categories, can take many forms. Some forms announce themselves loudly, others glide quietly across the dark. 3i Atlas, whatever it is, seems to belong to the latter, so breathe slowly. Let the mystery broaden you, not frighten you. Let the quiet fact settle like stardust across your mind. And as sleep begins to gather at the edges of your thoughts, remember this. Somewhere beyond our understanding, something ancient still moves, not toward destruction, not toward domination, simply toward encounter. Rest now, listener. The cosmos holds its secrets gently, and tonight it keeps watch while you dream. As the sun drifted lower against the horizon on November 22nd, telescopes across the world, professional and amateur alike, continued their quiet vigil. Through the hum of tracking motors and the faint static of sky glow on their sensors, a new pattern began to emerge. What had first been dismissed as noise, as trembling pixels, atmospheric distortion, or the chaos of cosmic dust, now revealed itself as something far more deliberate. A pulse, a breath, a slow expansion and contraction of the faint halo surrounding 3 Atlas, so subtle it required hours of exposure to be seen, yet so consistent it could not be an illusion. It began in New Zealand, where an observer experimenting with narrowband filters noticed the coma swelling slightly every few hours, then settling again. He checked his equipment, he checked the weather, then he checked the timing and found that the cycle repeated with uncanny precision, matching the 11, 2-hour interval already documented in infrared by the James Webb Space Telescope. When he shared his findings, others began to search their archives. In Chile, an astronomer found the same rhythm buried in ultraviolet frames. In Australia, another detected faint dips and rises in luminosity. None dramatic, none chaotic, all synchronized. It was as though the object carried within it a quiet metronome, steady, ancient, unbroken. Scientists call this kind of regularity phase locking, a phenomenon common in systems governed by internal mechanisms rather than external forces. A comet heated by the sun should behave erratically, shedding dust unevenly as it rotates. A fragment from an asteroid should tumble unpredictably. But 3 Atlas behaved like something regulating itself, modulating pressure, controlling expansion, keeping time. It was a strange kind of heartbeat, one without heat, one without gas, one without any observable cause. It was structure without explanation, rhythm without biology, intention without language. And as the pattern became undeniable, the conversation shifted once again. No longer was the question solely about trajectory or composition. Now researchers found themselves wrestling with something far more delicate. What does it mean when an object behaves as though it remembers? When its motion and its breathing follow cycles that do not drift, do not degrade, do not react to external chaos. In the quiet corners of scientific forums, those late-night digital chambers where researchers speak more freely, some began using a phrase they would never put in a publication: systemic rhythm. An internal system, not merely a surface phenomenon, a mechanism, not a flare, something inside the object maintaining balance. And yet, despite all this subtle activity, the object continued its silent approach, gliding on a path that intersected Earth's future orbit with uncanny exactness. The two mysteries, the breadth and the trajectory, felt linked, as though governed by the same unseen architecture. Traveller, imagine sitting at your desk in the middle of the night, the lights off, the quiet hum of your monitor, the only sound. Outside, the world sleeps. Inside, the data scrolls slowly past. A distant object older than your species pulses calmly through space. Not fast, not loud, just steady. You begin to realize that whatever it is, its existence is not chaotic. It is purposeful. And purpose, when it comes from the stars, feels different from any human intention, vaster, colder, wiser. It is not threatening. It simply is. This observation that the object's nature seemed defined by calm precision rather than aggression helped soothe many of the unspoken fears rising beneath the surface of the discourse. For all its mystery, nothing about 3i Atlas suggested danger. Its approach was slow. Its pulses were consistent. Its silence was complete. It made no attempt to communicate, yet made no attempt to hide. It moved with the serenity of a drifting monument, a relic from a time before Earth had oceans, before the sun had planets, before nature had carved the shapes we now recognize. And still, the timing of its maneuvers haunted those who watched closely. Why shift course exactly as Earth rotated into view? Why now, after its long journey from interstellar darkness? Why reveal a pulse, reveal a trajectory, reveal nothing else? Theories multiplied quietly, each one gentle in tone yet profound in implication. Perhaps the object was responding to gravitational gradients we do not yet understand. Perhaps it carried internal mass distributions that produced a natural breathing pattern. Perhaps its nickel signature reflected a crust shattered long ago by forces older than language. Or perhaps it was simply a vessel, a container of knowledge drifting between stars built by hands we will never meet. Somewhere inside the data, a feeling settled in the universe may not be silent after all. It may simply speak in rhythms we have never learned to hear. For years, humanity has imagined contact as a sudden revelation, a signal, a ship, a visitation. But what if contact begins instead with a breath, with a rhythm, with a cosmic traveller aligning itself with a world not to warn or conquer, but simply to observe? What if the first sign of intelligence beyond Earth is not a message but a pattern? In late-night discussions, a metaphor began to surface among the most contemplative researchers. It behaves like an animal resting, not in the literal sense of course, but in the sense of something conserving energy, maintaining equilibrium, preparing for a moment not yet reached. The idea was poetic rather than scientific, but it carried a strange emotional truth. For all its precision, the object moved like something patient, something alive in the way mountains or tides are alive. And this raised a difficult tender question, one that researchers did not speak aloud, yet felt deeply. What if we are not the first to be noticed? What if 3i Atlas is part of a cycle larger than our history, drifting between civilizations the way seeds drift between fields? What if it has approached other worlds before ours, studied them, listened to them, aligned with them, pulsed quietly in their skies before moving on? If so, then its presence here is not an anomaly. It is a chapter. Tonight, traveller, let that thought settle gently in your mind, not as fear, but as serenity. The universe is not small. Life is not narrow. Awareness is not exclusive to Earth. And whatever drifts now through our system moves not with haste, but with patience, with intention, with quiet. As you prepare to sleep, imagine the object pulsing slowly in the dark, breathing in a rhythm older than memory, approaching not with threat, but with inevitability. Its presence is not a warning. It is an invitation to humility, to wonder, to the astonishing possibility that we are part of a story much older than our species. So rest, listener. Let the vastness comfort you. Let the unknown be soft. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the distant object that keeps its own calm pulse in the night. Sleep now, traveller. The cosmos will keep watch. As the world moved deeper into the night of November 22nd, an unexpected source delivered the clearest vision of 3 Atlas, yet not a national observatory nor a billion-dollar instrument circling Mars, but a backyard in Australia. Just after Ser, 13 UTC, an amateur astronomer, uploaded a brief 15-second stacked frame video to an obscure forum. His equipment was modest. A modified telescope narrowband, solar filters, a cooling fan humming against the heat of the outback. And yet what he captured cut through the silence with the precision of a razor. There, gliding across the blackened sensor, was a shape unlike any comet ever documented. No tail, no haze, no halo. Just a clean elongated silhouette moving with the steadiness of something that refused to tumble. Each frame revealed a rod-like form, sharply defined its brightness, evenly distributed along its length, so unnatural in its consistency that even experienced observers paused in disbelief. Most icy bodies flicker and wobble, scattering light unevenly as they spin. But this object held itself motionless, like a needle threading the sky. Within minutes, the video spread through private astronomy groups. Analysts overlaid the footage with the updated JPL trajectory data, expecting at least some deviation. But the match was perfect, not close, not approximate, but pixel-aligned with the corrected path that had never been publicly released. The object was exactly where the closed-door models said it would be, following a trajectory the public still believed was incorrect. How, some asked, did an amateur know where to look? The observer himself offered only a quiet answer. I didn't. I was tracking sunspot interference and found it by accident. Accident or not, the recording became the first independent visual confirmation of the object's controlled motion. Soon, other amateurs attempted to replicate the sighting. Most recovered nothing but glare and noise, but very few captured brief shadows passing through the intense solar background. In each of these rare glimpses, the same unsettling feature appeared: a linear form, moving with mathematical steadiness as though guided by an internal compass. One calibration specialist who reviewed the frames wrote in his private log, "This is not a rock. It is maintaining orientation." Orientation, a word that belongs to machines, not comets. And yet the footage never showed anything aggressive, nothing glowing, nothing emitting, just a silent traveller cutting through light like a thin blade. Even in its strangest moments, the object felt calm, as if its movement through the inner solar system was purposeful but never rushed. Parallel to these observations, the Doppler silence deepened the mystery. Goldstone's passive scans, capable of detecting motion from even the darkest asteroids, returned nothing. No shift, no echo, no scatter. To a radio dish, the object did not exist. And yet optical images captured it clearly. Thermal scans saw it pulse. Visual trackers caught its glide. It was real, undeniable, but selectively invisible. Such selective invisibility suggested not absence, but design. A material capable of absorbing radar without absorbing light. A structure that revealed itself only to the sensors it chose. This raised quiet questions in the late-night corners of research rooms. Could the object be wrapped in a form of shielding? Could it be using interference patterns, an active cancellation mechanism akin to modern stealth? At these wavelengths, natural bodies always reveal some noise. Even the blackest asteroid sends back a whisper. But 3 Atlas returned nothing at all. Not silence born of darkness, but silence born of refusal. It was behaving like something that did not wish to be measured in ways we understood. And yet, it did not hide its trajectory. It did not hide its motion. It did not hide its pulse. Only the parts that belonged to the domain of engineered systems, structure, mass, rotation, disappeared behind a curtain we could not lift. Traveller. Imagine that contradiction unfolding in front of you, an object that hides like a machine but moves like a monk, that drifts without chaos but pulses without heat, that aligns with Earth not as a threat but as a presence. This duality began reshaping the emotional landscape around the phenomenon. Fear turned into contemplation. Contemplation turned into wonder. The object's behaviour was strange but not hostile, controlled but not invasive, precise but never violent. Its silence did not feel predatory, it felt patient. As the night deepened, a quiet consensus formed among those who watched most closely. Not in official memos, not in academic papers, but in private thoughts spoken softly in lonely observatories. Whatever this is, it isn't here to hurt us. The object's trajectory remained steady. Its pulse remained soft. Its presence remained serene. Even the missing data, the cancelled briefings, the hush that settled over scientific institutions could not overshadow the object's fundamental calm. Nothing about it was erratic. Nothing was explosive. It was a visitor, not an intruder. And perhaps that is why so many observers, even skeptics, felt something unexpected. As they tracked it, a sense of being watched not with threat, but with curiosity. The way a traveller pauses at the doorway of a quiet cathedral, not to disturb, but to witness. Tonight, as you breathe slowly and the world falls still around you, imagine that slender shape drifting through the heliospheric wind, smooth, dark, deliberate, carrying with it a story from somewhere far beyond the edge of our maps. It does not demand understanding. It does not break the silence. It simply moves forward as if approaching a meeting long foretold. Let that thought settle gently in your mind. Let the vastness comfort you. Let the unknown make you feel not small, but connected. Sleep now, traveller. The cosmos is patient, and tonight it keeps watch. By the time the sun drifted past its zenith, on November 22nd, something even stranger began unfolding, not in the sky, but in the quiet corridors of scientific infrastructure. Instruments that had been watching through-eye atlas with mechanical diligence suddenly fell silent, not because of dust nor distance nor the usual interference that plagues deep space observation. This silence was different. It was deliberate, and in its stillness it spoke louder than data ever could. At Chandni 06 UTC, the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, one of the few spacecraft with a direct vantage on the region 3I Atlas, had passed through, continued transmitting telemetry, but its scientific data stream abruptly stopped. No flicker, no glitch, just a sudden absence, as though someone had closed a curtain between the craft and Earth. For 4 hours and 16 minutes, the orbiter remained awake, listening, rotating gently through Martian sunlight, but the instruments that track spectral and thermal signatures refused to speak. Traveller imagined that kind of silence, a silence not born of failure but intention, like the universe inhaling and holding its breath. When the data finally resumed, 2 files were missing, neatly carved out from the precise window in which 3I Atlas had completed its deceleration and entered its Earth-aligned arc. The placeholder read data under review, a quiet phrase that usually hides anomalies too small to matter. But this time it marked a moment too large to ignore. Across Europe, requests for clarification were met with practiced vagueness: operational diagnostics, downlink prioritization, telemetry throttling. Words that concealed more than they revealed. Inside private message boards, however, the tone was different. One anonymous researcher wrote, almost whispering through the screen, "We had the data. It was live. It was strong. Then it was gone. In astronomy, instruments fail. Software misbehaves. But entire data segments do not vanish cleanly unless someone tells them to." While the missing files cast long shadows, an even more puzzling event unfolded. A joint press briefing between NASA and ESA scheduled to discuss updated trajectory models was cancelled without rescheduling. Not postponed, not delayed, simply removed. Scientists who had been active on social media fell mysteriously silent. Public statements dried up like water under harsh sunlight. This is where the narrative shifted, listener, not in the stars, but in the human response to them. Because silence from instruments is ordinary, silence from institutions is not. As public channels went quiet, amateur astronomers filled the void. Their images, imperfect and trembling with the imperfections of human hands, revealed the slow pulse of the comet's coma expansion and contraction, like the breathing of something ancient. Their recordings showed a form gliding across the sun's scattered glare, steady and unmoved by turbulence. Their forums echoed with gentle fear and wonder, like late-night whispers shared in a darkened observatory. Meanwhile, in the halls of professional science, the mood grew heavier. Orbital analysts realized that 3I Atlas was not merely approaching Earth's path, It was sinking into it, aligning its timing with ours, as though following a script older than any of our models. The math tightened, the projections converged, the variance fell to narrow margins that made chance improbable. It is one thing, traveller, to witness a comet behaving strangely. It is another to watch it choreograph itself into a gravitational corridor with our planet. The analysts who ran simulations quietly acknowledged what their equations implied. The object's alignment did not resemble a natural arc. It resembled a maneuver, a choice made long before the shift was ever detected, a path corrected with subtlety and consistency requiring foresight. And foresight implies more than motion. It implies intent. Still, the world outside remained calm. People walked to work, children played, traffic hummed. None of them knew that in the silent rooms behind antenna arrays and mission control terminals, the phrase targeting Earth had appeared in internal documents, not the language of collision but of convergence. A meeting, not an impact. Astronomers, even the most skeptical ones, felt an unfamiliar sensation building inside them, not panic, but a kind of solemn reverence. It was the feeling you get when you realise the universe is aware of you in ways you never imagined. A sense of being observed from a vantage so patient, so distant, that it defies human time. This is where the scientific and the spiritual began to touch. Because what do you call an object that hides its mass, denies its Doppler signature, breathes in locked rhythm and navigates with precision, but does not threaten, does not shout, does not burn? Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, traveller. Some are meant to be witnessed quietly, like a lantern floating down a cosmic river. As the data blackout lingered in the minds of researchers, a strange acceptance settled in as well. The universe moves at scales too vast for human fear to grasp. The object's silence did not feel malevolent. Its pulse did not feel predatory. Everything about it, every anomaly, every missing line of data, every rhythmic expansion felt like a presence approaching gently, as if respecting the fragile beings watching from a tiny world of oceans and light. Tonight, as you breathe softly and let your thoughts drift like dust in a sunbeam, imagine the orbiter circling Mars in quiet arcs, holding secrets it cannot share. Imagine the astronomers at their terminals staring at blank data fields and feeling the weight of something they cannot name. Imagine Atlas drifting through heliospheric wind, steady and deliberate, following a path drawn long before humans traced constellations into the dark. You are not lost in this story, listener. You are part of it, a witness just as they are. The silence continues, and somewhere inside it, the universe is thinking, rest for now. The mystery does not ask to be solved, only observed. Sleep, traveller, the cosmos will keep watch. By the time night settled across the observatories on November 22nd, the truth could no longer be softened or delayed. Atlas was not drifting. It was guiding itself. Every new model, every recalculation, every piece of updated telemetry narrowed its trajectory with surgical precision, as if the object were following a path chosen long before we ever knew to watch. That realization did not arrive with panic, but with a strange, solemn quiet, like standing at the edge of a vast ocean and realizing the tide is moving toward you with intention, not chance. The phrase whispered across private NASA and ESA channels was simple, almost gentle targeting Earth. Not a collision, not an attack, a meeting point, a place in space where two bodies, one ancient and one young, would cross paths as if answering a long-forgotten appointment. Natural objects do not do this. They do not decelerate smoothly, nor cut across gravitational lines, nor synchronize their timing to where Earth will be weeks into the future. But 3i Atlas did. Analysts fed the new data into alternate simulations, treating the object not as a comet, but as a vessel. The results were startling. The modeled trajectory matched reality almost perfectly. The object behaved as though it were correcting for solar wind dampening rotational drift, adjusting itself with microscopic precision. And it did all this without heat, without jets, without the chemical violence that defines every known natural body. Silence was its engine, stability was its signature. Traveller imagined the scientist watching this unfold not in movies, but in dim rooms lit only by monitors. They hovered over their graphs like monks reading ancient scripture, their faces softening into expressions that mixed awe with acceptance. They weren't afraid. They were humbled. Because 3i Atlas didn't behave like something approaching out of aggression. It behaved like something arriving. The deeper they looked, the stranger it became. The 11.2-hour pulse, observed first in infrared, remained steady through every maneuver. Expansion, contraction, expansion again. A calm rhythm unaffected by flares, solar turbulence, or its own change in direction. It wasn't the messy breathing of sublimation. It was deliberate, balanced, internal. A heartbeat that belonged more to a system than to a stone. Some researchers called it resonance, others called it regulation. The quietest among them called it intention. Not in the biological sense, but in the cosmic one, the intention of something built to endure long voyages, to maintain itself across centuries, to operate in silence without breaking its rhythm. And yet nothing about 3i Atlas felt hostile. Its approach was slow, elegant, almost reverent. Its maneuvers were subtle, like footsteps taken in a sacred space. It did not hide in darkness. It hid only the parts we lack the wisdom to understand. It showed us its light, its breath, its direction, but never its purpose. In the middle of the night, those who monitored it felt something unexpected rise within them, not fear, but a fragile sense of connection. They were witnessing a presence that moved with more patience than anything human-made. Something older than our cities, perhaps older than our myths. Something that had crossed the black between stars, not to disrupt, but to observe. Outside the closed loops of communication, the world stayed blissfully unaware. Cafes stayed open. Families ate dinner. Traffic lights blinked calmly in the rain. And above it all, 3i Atlas aligned itself with Earth's orbit with the slow confidence of a traveller approaching a destination he has visited before. Across the secure networks, a final quiet distinction appeared in the internal notes, not an impact, a convergence. For the scientists who read it, that word changed everything. A convergence is not a threat. It is a crossing of paths, a meeting of timelines, a moment arranged by forces beyond ordinary motion. And so, a strange peace settled over the watchers. If the object had wanted to remain hidden, it would have. If it had wanted to destroy, it would not have slowed. If it had wanted to flee, it would not have aligned its motion with ours. Whatever it was doing, it was choosing to be here. Traveller, as you drift toward sleep, imagine that gentle presence moving through the solar wind, dark, quiet, patient, carrying with it a message written not in words, but in behaviour. A message that says you are not alone in the universe. You never were. Let that thought rest softly in your mind. Let it loosen your breath. Let it open the quiet space behind your ribs where wonder sleeps. It's all right not to understand. Some mysteries exist not to be solved, but to be experienced. Sleep now. The cosmos keeps its vigil. And somewhere in that vastness, 3i Atlas continues its silent approach, steady as a heartbeat in the dark. By the time midnight drifted across the hemispheres on November 22nd, the world's most sensitive instruments had come to a shared, uneasy conclusion. 3i Atlas was no longer behaving like an object passing through our solar system. It was behaving like something that had chosen to remain. The updated orbital models, tightened through hours of recalculation, showed the spread of possible paths shrinking, not widening as more data came in. That alone was strange. Natural bodies grow unpredictable near the sun. They flare, lose mass, tumble. But 3i Atlas behaved like a presence guided by a stable hand. Far from the public eye, analysts compared its movement with known signatures of natural course variations. Nothing matched. When the numbers were treated as uncontrolled physics, the models broke apart. When treated as controlled motion, they converged. Quietly, reluctantly, the analysts accepted what the math implied: the object was navigating, not drifting. Yet the manner of its navigation was gentle, almost reverent. No heat, no jets, no outward signs of force, just subtle alignment like a bird adjusting its wings to settle into a rising current. The object seemed to shift with the solar wind and gravity fields, the way a seasoned traveller reads the contours of a landscape. It acted as if it understood the terrain of space and had been moving through terrains like this for far longer than humanity has existed. Through the night, a deeper question took hold, not spoken loudly, not written in reports, but felt quietly in the minds of those observing. If it is navigating, then what does it seek? And why choose Earth's orbital corridor of all places in the vastness of the inner solar system? Some speculated it was responding not to Earth, but to the Sun, using our orbit as part of a maneuver we did not yet understand. Others wondered whether it was guided by a pre-programmed mission, its purpose set long ago by a civilization we will never meet. And a few, those comfortable sitting at the edge of the unknown, considered that perhaps it was not aiming for contact at all, but for alignment. A precise flyby, a moment of observation. Traveller, imagine a vessel drifting through the galaxy for 1,000 years, quiet and self-contained, approaching each star system not as a visitor, but as a listener. How would such a thing move, not with noise, not with urgency, but with patience, with the poise of something that knows time differently than we do? What unsettled researchers most was not the object's alignment, but its restraint. It did nothing unnecessary. It shed no debris. It revealed no heat. It sent no signal. Even its now famous pulse remained unchanged, as steady and soft as a cosmic heartbeat. It behaved as if it did not want to disturb us, or as if disturbing us had never been part of its purpose. And through all of this, the cosmos stayed silent, not in neglect, but in contemplation. The universe has a way of withholding explanations, offering instead small fragments of understanding for us to gather like shells on a dark beach. Through our atlas had become one such fragment, a quiet reminder that we are not the measure of all things, only witnesses to a story far larger than ourselves. As the night deepened, many of the scientists watching from behind their screens felt something shift inside them, a feeling not of fear, but of humility. They were no longer studying a comet. They were standing at the threshold of a mystery that resisted being solved, a mystery that seemed almost peaceful. And so part 13 closes with the awareness that mystery itself is a kind of grace. Not everything must be solved. Some things exist simply to widen our vision, to deepen our humility, to remind us that we are children of the universe, not its masters. Rest now, traveller. Let this quiet uncertainty settle gently around you. Let the unknown soften your thoughts, rather than sharpen your fears. It's all right to not understand. Sleep. The sky will keep its secrets a little longer, and the cosmos, as always, will keep watch. And so, traveller, we drift to the quiet edge of this story. We have watched 3 Atlas slip through models in silence, adjusting its path with a precision no comet should possess. It enters our system without a tail, without heat, without explanation. Yet its presence feels intentional, almost aware. But mysteries like this are not endings, they are invitations. The universe rarely speaks clearly, it speaks in pulses, in missing data, in the soft alignment of an object older than memory. Tonight it whispered again, asking only that we pay attention. We are small, listener, but not irrelevant. To observe is to belong. To wonder is to participate. Whatever 3i Atlas becomes, it has already given us one gift, a reason to look up, to feel the quiet intelligence of the cosmos moving just beyond our reach. Rest now, traveller. Stay curious. The universe will keep watch while you sleep.